The frozen ground cracked under the massive drilling machines as they cut deeper into the surface of Kepler 442b. Ice crystals flew through the thin air like tiny diamonds, catching the light from the pale red sun hanging low in the purple sky. Hyunwoo pulled his coat tighter around his shoulders and watched the alien workers move around the dig site like busy insects. The Catherian Empire had been digging here for 3 months. Their tall, blue-skinned bodies moved with quick, sharp motions as they operated their advanced equipment. They wore sleek environmental suits that shimmered with energy fields, protecting them from the cold that bit through human clothing like hungry teeth. Hyunwoo envied them their technology, but he did not trust their judgment. "The readings are getting stronger," So-min said, walking up beside him. Her breath made white clouds in the cold air. She held a human-made scanner in her gloved hands, its simple display showing energy patterns that made no sense. "Whatever is down there, it is big, really big." Hyunwoo nodded and looked at the deep hole the machines had carved. It was already 50 meters deep and getting deeper every hour. The Catherians had found something buried under all that ice and rock, something that their fancy sensors said was artificial. They thought it was a prize worth digging up. Hyunwoo thought it looked like trouble. "Dr. Hyunwoo," a sharp voice called out. Dojin approached them with long, confident strides. The Catherian expedition leader stood almost 3 meters tall, his pale blue skin marked with the dark lines that showed his high rank in the Empire. His forearms moved independently as he gestured, a sign that he was either excited or annoyed, usually both. "Your species' primitive equipment is interfering with our scans. Please move it away from the excavation zone." "This primitive equipment is the only thing giving us accurate readings," Hyunwoo replied calmly. He had learned not to rise to Dojin's insults over the past few months. The Catherian believed humans were barely more advanced than cave dwellers, useful only for manual labor and simple tasks. "Your scanners show energy patterns. Mine show what those patterns mean." Dojin's secondary arms crossed over his chest in a gesture of dismissal. "Human superstition. Your people see danger in everything because you do not understand it. We have studied the energy signatures. This is clearly an ancient transportation device, possibly a faster-than-light gateway. Such technology would benefit the entire galaxy, or destroy it," So-min muttered under her breath. "What was that, human?" Dojin's voice carried the cold tone he used when talking to what he considered lower life forms. "Nothing, sir," So-min said, but her dark eyes showed her anger. Hyunwoo stepped between them before the situation could get worse. "Commander Dojin, have your people translated the warning markers we found around the perimeter yet?" "Warning markers?" Dojin waved a dismissive hand. "You mean those crude stone carvings? Primitive civilizations often created such things around sites they did not understand. Fear of the unknown is common among undeveloped species." 12. "Different languages," Hyunwoo said firmly. 12 separate civilizations, all leaving the same message in the same place. That is not fear of the unknown. That is knowledge of something very dangerous. Dojin's laugh was like ice-breaking. "Dr. Hyunwoo, your people have been in space for less than 300 years. The Catherian Empire has explored the galaxy for over 10,000 years. We know how to recognize truly dangerous artifacts. This is simply an abandoned piece of technology, nothing more." The ground shook suddenly, and a deep humming sound rose from the excavation site. The Catherian workers stopped their machines and looked around nervously. Even with their advanced suits, they could feel the vibration in their bones. "Sir," one of the workers called out in the musical Catherian language, "we have reached the artifact's surface." Dojin's eyes lit up with triumph. He strode toward the dig site, his excitement making his movements even quicker than usual. Hyunwoo and So-min followed, their human legs working hard to keep up with the tall alien's pace. At the edge of the hole, they could see what the machines had uncovered. A smooth, dark surface curved away into the shadows, too regular to be natural. Strange symbols covered the visible portion, glowing with a faint blue light that pulsed like a slow heartbeat. The humming grew louder as more of the artifact was revealed. "It is magnificent," Dojin breathed. "A perfect circle at least 100 meters in diameter. The construction materials are unknown, but the energy patterns suggest incredible power." Hyunwoo stared at the glowing symbols and felt cold that had nothing to do with the planet's weather. Do-jin, look at the symbols. Look at how they are arranged. Decorative patterns, nothing more. No, So-min said, her voice tight, with worry. I have seen these patterns before, in the warning markers, the same symbols arranged in the same way. Do-jin dismissed their concerns with an impatient gesture. Continue excavation, he ordered his workers. I want the entire structure exposed by tomorrow. Sir, Hyunwoo said urgently, we should study this more carefully before we expose the entire thing. The energy readings are off the charts. This could be dangerous. Dr. Hyunwoo, Do-jin said coldly, you are here as a consultant, nothing more. The Catherian Empire did not hire humans to make decisions. We hired you to carry equipment and take notes. The insult hit home, but Hyunwoo forced himself to remain calm. Then let me do my job. Let me study the warnings more carefully. Give me time to understand what we are dealing with. Time is a luxury we do not have, Do-jin replied. Imperial High Command wants results. They want this technology analyzed and ready for use within the month. We will not delay for human fears. So-min grabbed Hyunwoo's arm and pulled him aside. The scanner is going crazy, she whispered. The energy levels are climbing fast. Whatever this thing is, it is waking up. Hyunwoo looked back at the excavation site, where the Catherian workers were already lowering more equipment into the hole. The glowing symbols pulsed faster now, and the humming had changed to something that sounded almost like music. Ancient alien music that made his teeth ache. We need to contact the other human colonies, he said quietly. If Do-jin is right and this is some kind of gateway, we need to warn people about what might come through it. And if he is wrong? Hyunwoo watched the blue glow grow brighter as more of the artifact was revealed. Then we need to warn them about that too. The excavation continued through the night, the Catherian workers using artificial lights that turned the ice into a field of glittering crystals. Hyunwoo and So-min took shifts watching the dig site, recording everything their simple equipment could detect. The energy readings kept climbing, and the symbols pulsed faster and faster. By dawn, the entire structure was exposed. It was indeed a perfect circle, 100 meters across and 10 meters thick. The dark material seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it, except for the glowing symbols that now covered the entire surface. The center of the circle was empty space, filled with a shimmering energy field that rippled like water. Do-jin stood at the edge of the excavation, his 4 arms spread wide in triumph. Behold, he announced to his workers, the gateway that will make the Catherian Empire masters of the entire universe. The energy field in the center of the circle suddenly flared bright white. The humming became a roar that shook ice from the surrounding cliffs. And somewhere, far out in the dark between the stars, something very old and very dangerous opened its eyes for the first time in millions of years. 3 months after the gate had awakened on Kepler 442b, the first ships began to disappear. It started with a mining vessel called the Bright Fortune, working alone in the asteroid belt of the Proxil system. The ship simply vanished from all sensors, leaving behind only a debris field of twisted metal and a distress signal that cut off mid-transmission. Tae-hyung read the report for the 3rd time, sitting in his small office aboard the Catherian military station orbiting Zentari Prime. As a human military advisor, he was supposed to help the Catherians understand human tactics and psychology. What he actually did was try to make sense of intelligence reports that the Catherians either ignored or misunderstood completely. Another one, he muttered, adding the Bright Fortune to his growing list of missing ships. 17 vessels in 3 months all vanished without explanation. The Catherian High Command called it equipment failure or pirate activity. Tae-hyung called it a pattern. A soft chime announced a visitor. The door slid open to reveal Ji-won, a Catherian scientist who worked in the station's research department. Unlike most of her species, she had learned to value human opinions, probably because her own people often dismissed her ideas as too radical. Tae-hyung, she said, her musical voice carrying worry, have you seen the latest sensor logs from the outer systems? Which ones? He asked, though he suspected he knew the answer. Ji-won activated a holographic display above his desk. The image, showed a star map of known space, with red markers indicating the locations where ships had disappeared. "Look at the pattern," she said, her forearms moving in agitated gestures. "The disappearances are not random. They form a line, moving inward from the edge of our territory toward the core worlds." Tae-hyung studied the display and felt a cold weight settle in his stomach. "They are following the trade routes. Whatever is taking our ships, it knows where we are and how we move." "There is more," Ji-won said, changing the display to show energy readings. 3 days ago, long-range sensors detected massive energy signatures moving through deep space. The readings match no known technology. "How massive?" "Large enough to power entire star systems," she replied. "And they are moving toward inhabited space." Tae-hyung leaned back in his chair and rubbed his tired eyes. For weeks, he had been trying to convince Catherian Command that something serious was happening, but they refused to listen. The Empire had been the dominant power in this part of the galaxy for thousands of years. They could not imagine anything that posed a real threat to their superiority. "Have you shown this to Commander Velkar?" he asked. Ji-won's skin darkened with embarrassment, a Catherian sign of frustration. "He says the readings are sensor errors caused by solar flare activity. When I showed him the ship disappearances, he blamed human pirates operating stolen Catherian technology." "Of course he did," Tae-hyung said with a bitter laugh. "Humans made convenient scapegoats for anything the Catherians could not explain, easily." The communication system in his office suddenly activated, showing the pale face of Wu Jin, the administrator of New Busan Colony. The human settlement was located on the edge of Catherian space, far from the core worlds where most aliens lived. Wu Jin looked tired and scared. "Tae-hyung, thank the stars I reached you," Wu Jin said urgently. "We have a situation here. A big one." "What kind of situation?" "Unknown ships appeared in our system 2 hours ago. They are nothing like anything in our databases. They look like they are made of shadow and starlight, if that makes any sense. Our sensors can barely detect them." Ji-won moved closer to the display, her scientific curiosity overcoming her fear. "How many ships?" "At least 50 that we can see," Wu Jin replied. "Maybe more. They are just sitting there at the edge of the system, not responding to our communications. But Tae-hyung, there is something else. The colonists are reporting strange dreams. All of them. Every single person on New Busan had the same nightmare last night." "What kind of nightmare?" Tae-hyung asked, though he was not sure he wanted to know the answer. "Dark shapes moving through space, consuming everything in their path, and voices speaking in languages that hurt to hear." The children woke up crying, and some of the adults are still too scared to leave their homes. Tae-hyung and Ji-won exchanged worried glances. The Catherians were naturally telepathic to a limited degree, but humans were supposed to be immune to most psychic effects. If something could influence human minds across space, it was far more dangerous than simple pirates or equipment failures. "Wu Jin, I need you to evacuate everyone to the inner system immediately," Tae-hyung said. "Do not wait for official orders. From Catherian Command." "Already working on it," Wu Jin replied. "But our ships are old cargo haulers and passenger transports. If those things decide to attack, we cannot fight back or run away fast enough." "Then hide," Tae-hyung said firmly. "Use the asteroid belt. Find somewhere the sensors cannot reach you, and stay quiet until help arrives." "What help?" "The nearest Catherian fleet is 6 days away, and they probably will not come for a human colony anyway." Tae-hyung knew Wu Jin was right. In the Catherian Empire, human settlements were considered expendable. They existed to provide cheap labor and raw materials, nothing more. If New Busan was destroyed, the Empire would simply build a new colony somewhere else. "Just stay alive," he said. "I will find a way to get help to you." The transmission ended, leaving Tae-hyung and Ji-won alone with their fears and the growing certainty that something terrible was happening. The unknown ships at New Busan were almost certainly connected to the disappearances along the trade routes. But what were they, and what did they want? "I have been studying the energy readings from the gate on Kepler 442b, Ji-won said quietly. "The activation pulse traveled much farther than we initially calculated. It reached the edge of known space and beyond." "You think the gate called these things?" "I think the gate woke them up," she replied. "Something has been sleeping out there in the dark, and we accidentally sent it a signal that said, 'We are here.' Tae-hyung stood up and began pacing around his small office. His military training told him to prepare for the worst-case scenario, but what was the worst case when dealing with unknown aliens with impossible technology? How do you fight an enemy that could make ships disappear and invade people's dreams? "We need to contact the human colonies directly," he said finally. "Warn them about what is coming. The Cytherians will not protect them, so they need to protect themselves." "That would be considered treason," Ji-won pointed out. "Humans are not allowed to communicate military intelligence without Cytherian approval." "Then I guess I am a traitor," Tae-hyung said with a grim smile. "Better a living traitor than a dead patriot." He activated his personal communication equipment using human encryption codes that the Cytherians had never bothered to learn. Within minutes, he was connected to administrators and military leaders on dozens of human worlds. The message was simple but urgent. Unknown hostiles were moving through space, ships were disappearing, and help from the Cytherian military would probably not come. The responses varied from disbelief to anger to fear, but most of the human leaders understood what Tae-hyung was telling them. They had always known they were on their own in the galaxy. Now they would have to prove they could survive without their alien overlords. As he sent the last warning message, Tae-hyung received an emergency transmission from New Busan. Woo Jin's face appeared on the screen, but this time he was not alone. Behind him, Tae-hyung could see other colonists working frantically at control panels. "They are moving," Woo Jin said without any greeting. "All 50 ships, coming straight for the colony. Estimated time to arrival is 4 hours. Can you evacuate in time?" "Most people, yes, but we cannot save the colony itself. 20 years of work just gone." "Buildings can be replaced," Tae-hyung said. "People cannot. Get everyone out of there and find somewhere to hide." "Already moving," Woo Jin replied. "But Tae-hyung, there is something else. Our long-range sensors are picking up more ships coming. From deep space. Hundreds of them, maybe thousands. This is just the beginning." The transmission ended, and Tae-hyung sank into his chair with the weight of terrible knowledge. Whatever was coming for them was not just a raiding party or an exploration fleet. It was an invasion force, and the galaxy was not ready to fight it. Somewhere in the dark between the stars, ancient minds planned the destruction of everything that lived and breathed and hoped. They had slept for millions of years, waiting for the signal that would tell them when new prey had grown strong enough to be worth hunting. The gate had given them that signal, and now they were coming home. The ancient library on Kepler 442b had been buried under ice for so long that even the Cytherians missed it in their initial scans. It was Hyun-woo who found it, following power readings from his simple human scanner 3 kilometers away from the gate site. While Do-jin and his team celebrated their transportation breakthrough, Hyun-woo and So-min discovered the truth that would change everything. "These symbols are not decorative," So-min said, running her gloved hands over the crystal walls of the underground chamber. The walls glowed with soft blue light, activated by their presence after millions of years of darkness. "They are a warning system, a record." Hyun-woo stood in the center of the circular room, surrounded by towering columns of crystalline data storage. Each column contained terabytes of information in a format that his basic translation software could barely understand. But what he could read made his blood run cold. "So-min, look at this," he said, pointing to a section of wall that showed moving images. The pictures were simple, but clear. A galaxy full of life and light, then darkness spreading from system to system like a disease. "This is not a transportation device. The gate is a prison." The images showed massive ships emerging from the dark between galaxies, ships that seemed to eat light itself. Entire worlds went silent as the ships passed, leaving behind empty husks, floating in space. The invasion had been swift and terrible, consuming everything in its path. "The Voidborn," So-min read from the translated text scrolling across her scanner. That is what they called themselves. They came from the space between galaxies, feeding on the energy of living worlds. No weapon could stop them. No defense could hold them back. Hyun-woo moved to another section of the wall, where the images showed a different scene. Representatives from dozens of alien species working together, building something massive in the empty space between stars. "But they found another way," he said. An alliance of civilizations we have never heard of. Species that existed millions of years before humans or Cytherians evolved. The ancient builders had spent centuries constructing the gate, not as a doorway, but as a trap. They lured the Voidborn to a single location and used the gate's power to banish them to the void between dimensions. The prison had held for millions of years, keeping the galaxy safe from an enemy that could not be defeated by conventional means. Until now, Somin said grimly. Du-Jin activated the gate 3 months ago. He broke the prison. A new voice spoke from the chamber entrance, startling both humans. You understand correctly, young ones. They turned to see In-Su, an elderly human historian who had arrived on the planet just 2 days earlier. He walked slowly into the chamber, his aged eyes taking in the crystal walls with wonder and sadness. Professor In-Su, Hyun-Woo said with surprise. How did you find us down here? I have been studying the warning markers for 40 years, In-Su replied. When I heard about the excavation, I knew I had to come here. The ancient texts I found on Earth spoke of this place, though I never thought I would live to see it. So-Min looked confused. Warning markers on Earth? But Earth was not contacted by aliens until 300 years ago. In-Su smiled sadly and touched one of the crystal columns. Immediately, it began displaying new information. Star charts, showing Earth's location, and images of early humans building stone circles and monuments. The builders knew that one day someone would find the gate and possibly break it. They scattered warning markers across the galaxy, including on a small planet where a young species showed unusual promise. Stonehenge, Hyun-Woo breathed. The pyramids, Easter Island. They were all warnings about this place. And instructions, In-Su added. The builders left a way to repair the prison, but they needed a biological component that did not exist. Yet. They needed a species that could think in ways the Voidborn could not predict or understand. A species that was chaotic, creative, and completely unpredictable. So-Min laughed bitterly. They needed humans, the species everyone else thinks is too primitive to matter. Precisely, In-Su said. The Voidborn are ancient and powerful, but they think in patterns that are millions of years old. They cannot adapt to something truly new. That is why they were beaten the first time. The alliance included young species that thought differently from the old ones. The crystal walls suddenly flashed red, and alarm sounds echoed through the chamber. Hyun-Woo's scanner showed massive energy spikes coming from the direction of the gate site. Do-Jin is trying to activate it again, So-Min said urgently. The readings are off the charts. They ran from the library toward the excavation site, In-Su moving as quickly as his old legs could carry him. Behind them, the crystal chambers went dark again, but the knowledge they had gained would not be forgotten. At the gate site, chaos ruled. Cytherian workers ran in all directions as energy discharges arced from the ancient structure. Do-Jin stood at a control panel, his 4 arms working frantically to operate systems he did not understand. The center of the gate had opened like a doorway into absolute darkness, and something was moving in that darkness. Do-Jin, shut it down! Hyun-Woo shouted over the noise. You do not understand what you are doing! I understand perfectly, Do-Jin replied arrogantly. This is a transportation gateway, and I am going to prove it works. The Empire will have instant travel to anywhere in the galaxy. A sound emerged from the gate that made everyone stop and listen in horror. It was like music, but wrong in every possible way. The notes hurt to hear and seemed to bypass the ears completely, vibrating in the bones and teeth of everyone present. Several Cytherian workers collapsed, clutching their heads in pain. That is not music, So-Min said, her face pale with fear. That is communication. Something is talking through the gate. The darkness in the center of the ring began to change, showing glimpses of shapes moving in impossible dimensions. Hyun-Woo could see parts of ships that seemed to be made of crystallized shadow, and lights that gave off darkness instead of illumination. The Voidborn were testing their prison, looking for ways to break through. The biological locks are failing, In-Su said, studying readings on his ancient scanner. The gate was designed to respond to specific genetic patterns. Do-Jin's people are close enough to trigger some functions, but not close enough to control them safely. Dojin finally realized that something was going wrong. The energy output from the gate was climbing beyond safe levels, and his control systems were not responding properly. "All workers evacuate to minimum safe distance," he ordered. "Prepare emergency shutdown procedures." "There are no emergency shutdown procedures," Hyun-woo said grimly. "The builders designed this as a one-way lock. Once it opens, only the right biological key can close it again." "What biological key?" Dojin demanded. "Human genetic patterns," Insu replied. "The builders programmed the gate to respond to the DNA of a species that would not evolve for millions of years. They were betting that when the time came, humans would be here to set things right." Dojin stared at the three humans with a mixture of disbelief and growing fear. "You are telling me that this ancient technology can only be controlled by the most primitive species in known space?" "Yes," So-min said simply. "And right now, we are the only ones who can fix what you broke." The sound from the gate grew louder, and the shapes in the darkness became clearer. Massive forms were pressing against the dimensional barriers, testing their strength. Cracks began to appear in the energy field that held the portal closed. "They are coming through," Hyun-woo said, urgently. "If we do not close this now, the Voidborn will break free completely." Dojin looked at his control panel, then at the gate, then at the humans he had dismissed as primitive and useless. For the first time since the excavation began, the arrogant Catherian commander looked truly afraid. "Tell me what to do," he said quietly. Insu moved to the control panel and began entering commands with steady, practiced hands. "The shutdown sequence requires continuous human DNA contact with the control interface. One of us has to stay connected to the system while it closes the portal." "What happens to whoever stays connected?" So-min asked. Insu looked at her with sad eyes. "The feedback from closing a dimensional rift this size will probably kill them. The builders designed it as a suicide switch." The gate pulsed with increasing violence, and the first Voidborn scout ship began to emerge from the darkness. It was small compared to what was coming behind it, but even this tiny vessel radiated power that made the air itself feel heavy and wrong. "I will do it," Hyun-woo said, stepping toward the control panel. "I am the senior archaeologist. This is my responsibility." "No," Insu said firmly, pushing him aside. "I am old, and I have been preparing for this moment my entire life. The builders left instructions in the Earth markers, and I am the only one who knows all of them." He placed his hand on the control interface, and immediately the gate began to respond. The chaotic energy discharges became organized, and the darkness in the portal started to shrink. "The shutdown sequence will take 15 minutes, Insu said, his voice already showing strain as the system drew on his life force. "You need to warn the galaxy about what is coming. The Voidborn have been freed from their prison, and they will not go quietly back into the dark." The Catherian fleet lasted exactly 47 minutes against the Voidborn advance force. Dong-hyun watched the battle from the command center of Asteroid Base 7, a hollowed-out rock that served as the secret headquarters for what remained of organized resistance in this sector. The base had been a simple mining station until 6 months ago, when the Voidborn invasion began in earnest. Now, it housed the largest human fleet in known space, 12 converted cargo ships, 8 mining vessels, and 3 actual military craft that had been borrowed from Catherian supply depots. "Sir, the Catherian heavy cruiser Bright Star is breaking apart," reported Jae-sung from his position at the sensor station. The young man had been a Special Forces operative before the invasion, trained to infiltrate alien installations and gather intelligence. Now he spent most of his time trying to make sense of sensor readings that defied conventional understanding. On the main display, the massive Catherian warship twisted and collapsed as Voidborn weapons tore through its shields like paper. The energy beams that had made Catherian ships masters of the galaxy were useless against an enemy that could absorb and redirect energy attacks. The cruiser's final transmission was a scream of terror as something dark and hungry boarded the ship. "That makes 15 Catherian fleets destroyed in the past month," said Minji, the Catherian refugee who had become Dong-hyun's tactical advisor. She had been a ship commander before her homeworld fell, and she understood both Catherian military, doctrine, and its complete uselessness against the Voidborn. My people keep trying the same tactics over and over, expecting different results. Dong-hyun nodded grimly. The Catherian Empire had ruled the galaxy for 10,000 years using superior energy weapons and shield technology. Their ships were faster, stronger, and more advanced than anything other species could build. But the Voidborn had evolved to fight energy-based civilizations. Every beam weapon made them stronger, every shield gave them more power to absorb. "Status report on the refugee evacuations," he ordered. 700,000 civilians evacuated from the Centauri colonies, Jae-sung replied, reading from multiple displays at once. "Another 1,000,000 from the outer settlements. But we are running out of places to put them. And running out of ships to move them," Minji added. "The cargo haulers are breaking down from overuse, and we do not have the spare parts to keep them running much longer." Dong-hyun turned to study the tactical display that showed voidborn movements across known space. The enemy advanced in a pattern that made no sense according to conventional military theory. Instead of conquering systems for resources or strategic position, they seemed to be looking for something specific. Every world they attacked had some connection to ancient ruins or archaeological sites. "They are not just invading," he said slowly. "They are hunting, looking for something the old civilizations left behind." "The gate builders," Minji said with sudden understanding. "The Voidborn are trying to find and destroy any technology that could be used to imprison them again?" A new alarm sounded, and Jae-sung's voice carried urgent fear. "Sir, long-range sensors are detecting a massive Voidborn fleet moving toward Earth. Estimated arrival time is 72 hours. Dong-hyun felt his heart sink. Earth was the birthplace of humanity, but more importantly, it was where the ancient builders had left their clearest instructions about how to defeat the Voidborn. If the enemy destroyed those archaeological sites, the galaxy would lose its only hope of stopping the invasion. "How many ships?" he asked. "At least 300 that we can detect," Jae-sung replied. "Maybe more. The sensor shadows make it hard to get accurate counts." "Earth's defenses?" "Minimal," Minji said sadly. 2 orbital stations and a handful of patrol craft. The Catherian Empire never considered Earth important enough to defend properly. Dong-hyun stared at the display for a long moment, thinking hard. Earth could not be defended by conventional means. The human homeworld simply did not have enough firepower to stop a Voidborn fleet. But humans had one advantage that their alien allies did not understand. They were too stubborn to accept. "Defeat gracefully. Send a message to all human colonies and bases," he ordered. "I need every ship we can spare, no matter how small or damaged. We are going to Earth." "Sir," Minji said carefully, "even with every human ship in space, we cannot match that kind of firepower. The Voidborn fleet could destroy our entire force without taking significant damage." "You are thinking like a Catherian," Dong-hyun replied with a grim smile. "Superior firepower wins battles between civilized species, but humans are not civilized. We cheat." Over the next 24 hours, human ships began arriving at the rally point near Jupiter's moons. They came from mining colonies and frontier settlements, from hidden bases and refugee camps. Most were civilian vessels hastily converted for combat, cargo haulers with missile pods welded to their hulls, passenger liners fitted with kinetic cannons, even a few luxury yachts mounting improvised weapons systems. "Admiral," Jae-sung said, using Dong-hyun's new informal title. "The final count is 237 ships of various sizes. None of them would last 5 minutes against a Catherian cruiser." "Good thing we are not fighting Catherians," Dong-hyun replied. He activated the fleet communication system, broadcasting to every human ship in the solar system. "All vessels, this is Admiral Dong-hyun. You all know why we are here. The Voidborn are coming to destroy Earth, and we are going to stop them." Murmurs of acknowledgement came back from the fleet, voices speaking in dozens of human languages and dialects. Miners and merchants, soldiers and scientists, all united by the simple fact that they refused to let their homeworld die without a fight. "The enemy has superior technology," Dong-hyun continued, "but they have been asleep for millions of years. They know how to fight energy weapons and shields. They do not know how to fight kinetic rounds, chemical explosives, and pure human stubbornness." He paused, looking out at the assembled fleet of mismatched ships and untrained crews. We are going to hit them with everything they do not expect. Solid projectiles instead of energy beams. Chemical warheads instead of plasma charges. Ramming attacks instead of standoff combat. We are going to show these ancient monsters what happens when you threaten a species too stupid to know when it is beaten. The Voidborn fleet arrived exactly on schedule, emerging from dark space like a plague of metallic locusts. Their ships defied easy description. They seemed to be made of crystallized shadow and dark energy, absorbing light from the surrounding space. The largest vessels were the size of small moons, covered with weapons that had destroyed entire star systems. All ships, this is it, Donghyun broadcast. Remember, do not use energy weapons unless you have no choice. Kinetic rounds, missiles, and ramming attacks only. Make every shot count. The human fleet spread out in loose formation, using tactics that would have made any Cytherian commander scream in frustration. Instead of maintaining neat battle lines, they scattered like a swarm of angry insects. The Voidborn responded with contempt, directing their devastating energy weapons at what they saw as primitive prey. The weapons passed harmlessly through human shields designed to deflect rather than absorb energy. Kinetic barriers made of simple steel and ceramic turned aside beams that could slice through Cytherian hulls. The Voidborn had spent millions of years perfecting weapons to fight advanced civilizations. They had no defense against humans too primitive to use the technology. Those weapons were designed to counter. First blood to humanity, Jae-sung reported as a human missile barrage tore through a Voidborn cruiser's hull. The enemy is adapting, but slowly. The battle became a chaotic swirl of ships, with human vessels darting between the massive Voidborn, craft like minnows attacking sharks. Chemical explosives detonated against alien hulls, spraying metal fragments that disrupted their exotic systems. Human pilots rammed their damaged ships into Voidborn weapons arrays, trading their lives for strategic targets. "Admiral, we are getting reports from the surface," Min-ji said urgently. "The Voidborn have deployed ground forces to the archaeological sites. They are trying to destroy the ancient markers." Donghyun looked at the tactical display and made a decision that would have been called insane by any rational military commander. "All ships, new target. We are going down to the surface. The Voidborn want to destroy humanity's birthright? Let them get past us first." The human fleet dove toward Earth like a falling star, pursued by Voidborn ships that had never faced an enemy willing to fight with such desperate courage. Above the ancient stone circles and monuments where the gate builders had left their final messages, the descendants of those who had been chosen to save the galaxy prepared to prove they were worthy of that trust. In the skies over Stonehenge, a converted cargo hauler loaded with mining explosives rammed straight into a Voidborn destroyer, proving that sometimes the most primitive solution is also the most effective one. The ancient stones of Stonehenge had stood for 5,000 years, weathering storms and wars and the slow passage of centuries. Now they glowed with the same blue light as the gate on Kepler 442b, responding to the presence of both humans and Voidborn for the first time since they were built. Changmin crawled through the wreckage of his crashed fighter, bleeding from a dozen cuts but alive. Around him, the greatest battle in human history raged across the English countryside as human ships dove from orbit to attack Voidborn ground forces. The aliens had deployed strange machines that looked like giant spiders made of living darkness, each one working to destroy the ancient stone circles that contained the gate builder's final instructions. "Hyunwoo, can you hear me?" he called into his damaged radio. The archaeologist's voice crackled back through heavy static. "Changmin, where are you?" "About 50 meters from the main circle. The Voidborn have some kind of drilling equipment trying to break through the stones. I can see symbols lighting up as they work." "Those symbols are activation codes," Hyunwoo's voice came through clearer now. "The gate builders designed the monuments to respond when the Voidborn got close. It is like an automatic defense system." Changmin looked around at the chaos surrounding the ancient site. Human soldiers fought desperately against Voidborn warriors that seemed to be made of living shadow. The aliens moved like liquid darkness, flowing around human weapons and reforming to attack from unexpected angles. But the humans had learned to fight them with fire and explosives, using light and heat to disrupt their unnatural forms. "What do I need to do?" he asked. "Get to the center stone," Hyunwoo replied urgently. There should be a handprint carved into the surface. When you touch it, the monument will activate a connection to all the other sites around the world. Chang Min looked toward the massive trilithons at the heart of Stonehenge. Between him and the center stone stood at least 20 void-born warriors and their mechanical servants. His fighters' weapons were dead, and he had only his sidearm and whatever explosives he could salvage from the wreck. "That is going to be a problem," he said. "You do not have to do it alone," another voice cut into the radio channel. Kyung-ho, the pilot who had been leading the human fighter squadrons, spoke from somewhere overhead. "I am coming in fast and low. When I make my run, you move." Chang Min saw Kyung-ho's damaged fighter diving toward the monument site, its engines trailing fire and sparks. The pilot had lost his shields and most of his hull plating, but his kinetic cannons were still working. The Voidborn turned their attention skyward as the fighters screamed overhead, spraying metal projectiles that tore through their ranks. Chang Min ran for the center stone while the aliens were distracted, zigzagging between ancient pillars as void-born weapons sent beams of dark energy crackling past his head. He could hear Kyung-ho's fighter banking for another pass, the engines whining with strain. The center stone stood exactly where it had been placed 5,000 years ago, but now Chang Min could see the hidden features that human eyes had never noticed before. Symbols covered the surface in flowing script that seemed to move and change as he watched. And there, at waist height, was a handprint carved deep into the ancient rock. "I am at the stone," he reported. "I can see the handprint. Press your palm against it and hold on," Hyun-woo said. "The connection process might be painful." Chang Min placed his hand against the carved stone and immediately felt electricity shoot up his arm. But this was not ordinary electricity. It was something that touched his mind as well as his body, connecting him to a network of monuments and markers that spanned the entire planet. Through the connection, he could sense similar activations happening at dozens of sites around the world. The pyramids in Egypt, the Easter Island statues, mysterious stone circles in remote mountains, all of them were coming alive as humans touched the hidden activation points. Each contact added to the growing power that flowed through the ancient network. But Chang Min could also sense something else through the connection, the location of every active gate in the galaxy. The builders had created more than one prison, and the Voidborn had been breaking them open systematically as they spread through space. Earth's monuments were not just markers. They were control nodes for the entire prison system. "Hyun-woo," he said through gritted teeth as power coursed through his body. "The gates are not separate prisons. They are all part of one huge containment system. The Voidborn have been breaking them piece by piece, but if we can activate the Earth nodes, we can lock them all at once." "How many people does it take?" Hyun-woo asked. Chang Min could feel the network searching for compatible genetic patterns, scanning the humans who were touching stone circles around the world. "More than we have," he said grimly. "The system needs at least 50 active connections, and I am only sensing 37. Above him, Kyung-ho's fighter made another strafing run, but this time the Voidborn were ready. Dark energy beams converged on the damaged craft, tearing through what remained of its armor. The fighter began to spiral toward the ground, smoke pouring from its broken engines. "Kyung-ho, eject!" Chang Min shouted into his radio. "Negative," came the pilot's calm reply. "My ejection system is dead, but I can still fly this thing. Tell me where you need the biggest explosion." Chang Min looked around the monument site and saw the massive Voidborn drilling machine working to destroy the outer circle of stones. If it succeeded, the connection network would collapse and the prison system would remain broken forever. "The drill rig about 200 meters northeast of the center," he said. "But Kyung-ho, if you do this—" "I know," Kyung-ho interrupted. "Take care of my family, Chang Min. Tell them I died protecting something worth saving." The fighter dove straight down at the Voidborn machine. Its engines pushed past their safety limits. The explosion when it hit was visible from orbit, a pillar of fire and light that incinerated everything within 100 meters. The drilling machine collapsed into twisted metal, and the Voidborn warriors nearby were scattered by the blast. But the sacrifice had given Chang Min an idea. Through the network connection, he could feel the presence of other humans fighting similar battles around the world. They were all connected now, all part of the same system, and that meant he could share more than just information. "All stations, this is Chang Min at Stonehenge," he broadcast through the network. "I am going to try something that is probably impossible. If it works, we can close all the gates at once. If it does not work, well, we tried." He pressed both hands against the center stone and opened his mind completely to the ancient network. Instead of trying to maintain individual connections, he allowed his consciousness to merge with the system itself, becoming a conduit for every human touching a monument anywhere on Earth. The pain was incredible. 37 minds connected, through technology that was never meant for biological entities, sharing thoughts and memories and life force across thousands of miles. Chang Min felt himself beginning to dissolve into the network, his individual identity scattered among the other humans who were making the same sacrifice. But it was working. Through sensors built into the gate system, he could see void-born fleets throughout the galaxy suddenly finding their escape routes blocked. The prison dimensions were snapping shut one by one, trapping the ancient enemy in the void between realities where they belonged. "The gates are closing," Hyejin reported from her position at the Korean monument site. The Catherian engineer had volunteered to join the network when she realized that her people's technology was useless against the Voidborn. All across the galaxy, the prison system is reactivating. Chang Min felt his consciousness fading as the network drew on his life force to power the massive undertaking. But he could sense victory approaching. The Voidborn were being pulled back into their dimensional prison, their fleets dissolving into shadow and emptiness as the gates sealed shut. "Somebody has to survive to tell the story," he said weakly into the radio network. "Make sure people remember why we did this." "We will remember," Hyan-Woo promised from his position at a site in Scotland. "All of us who survive will remember." The network reached critical mass as more humans around the world joined the connection, adding their strength to the effort. Chang Min felt his individual existence slipping away, but he was not afraid. He was part of something larger now, something that spanned both space and time. The last Voidborn ship vanished into the dimensional void as the gates sealed shut with a sound like thunder across reality itself. The prison system that had protected the galaxy for millions of years was restored, powered by the willing sacrifice of humans who had refused to let ancient evil win. Chang Min's body collapsed beside the center stone of Stonehenge, but his last sensation was not pain. It was pride. Humanity had been chosen by the gate builders to be guardians of the galaxy, and they had proven themselves worthy of that trust. In the weeks that followed, as the scattered remains of galactic civilization began to rebuild, the surviving Catherians would ask the humans how they had managed to defeat an enemy that had destroyed the greatest fleets in known space. The answer was simple. They had been willing to sacrifice everything to protect something they loved. And sometimes that is the only weapon that matters.